What I'm going to do today is I want to talk a little bit about the political strategic context for the Gettysburg campaign. Why is Lee up here? When we get him kind of into Pennsylvania, I want to talk also about JEB Stuart, JEB Stuart's ride, why JEB Stuart ends up here. I got some great stories I want to tell you about interpersonal relationships between JEB Stuart and some of his subordinate officers. That'll have massive repercussions on what goes on here, as we're going to see. And it's actually a topic we talk about a lot over with the War College student about interpersonal relationships matter. And we're going to see really the impact of that on this campaign. Lee's going to have a great campaign plan put into place to come up here and win the war. He's going to actually get caught up here with his pants down and be surprised. That's going to impact a lot from JEB Stuart and some relationship issues that we're going to talk about on this as well. Now, you might have already detected that I have a Southern accent, okay? I have one point of clarification. Sometimes in this presentation, I might get a little animated. You'll see that. I'm sorry you're sitting where you are right now. When I get animated, sometimes I'm excited on this. Sometimes, on occasion, I'll say we. When I say we, that means Confederates, okay? I just want to make sure there's no point lost there. Okay, let's get started because I don't have a lot of time. This is actually an abbreviated version of a presentation I normally give. So, now, first thing, war is a political act with a political purpose. Political act with a political purpose. That means there's always a policy objective in war. And in the case, actually, of the Civil War here for the Confederates, that policy objective is all about independence, albeit to perpetuate and safeguard a slave society and economy, but nonetheless, it's all about independence. The Southerners actually see this war completely analogous to the American Revolution. In fact, at the time, they referred to it as the Second War of Independence. And if you look at the Great Seal of the Confederacy here, who is that figure right there? George Washington. George Washington, again, the symbolic link to the first American War of Independence. That's on the Great Seal of the Confederacy. So that's what it's all about. What that means is all Confederate elements of power, all of their military strategy, everything they're putting in place will be directed towards the objective of achieving independence from the United States of America. Okay, now, the Confederates are going to have a tough row to hoe, though, when it comes to strategy formulation. And that's because of resource means disparity. A lot of you guys know these figures. The North, population, 22 million. South population, 9 million, almost 4 million of those are slaves. The pre-war equivalent of gross domestic product that the South contributes to the nation, 8%. 8%. The manufacturing potential output of New York City by itself, greater than the entire South. Largest city in the South, New Orleans. Anybody tell me the second largest city in the Confederacy? Trick question. Anywhere the Federal Army of the Potomac is on any given day, it's the second largest city in the Confederacy. Yeah, not kidding. So when you look at means disparity here, the last little figure I like to give to really point this out, the largest Southern gun maker in Richmond, Virginia, in the entire Civil War made just over 30,000 rifles. Springfield up in Massachusetts made 15,000 to 20,000 a month. That means the largest Southern manufacturer in the entire Civil War made 2 months of Springfield's production. That just gives you an idea. So now, when you're dealing with that as a strategist, okay, one side has a lot of resources or means, the other side actually, not so much. So, as military strategists, which, here at the War College, we actually teach a lot of military strategy, I'm going to give you actually a military secret. So, for those of you who can't give this out now when you go home, okay? Excuse me. If you're a physicist, E equals mc squared is your most important equation for everything you do. If you're a military strategist, that equation is this. Power of resistance equals means times will. Means, resources, times will. Your will to do it. Now, if power of resistance should go to 0, you just lost the war. Okay, so means times will equals that power of resistance. That multiplication sign is important because if either will or means go to zero, what's power resistance? Zero. So if you're a strategist now coming up with how you're going to win this war and you're going to attack the other guy, you're looking at whether you're going to target his means or his will. And if you're the weak guy and the other guy has a lot of resources and you don't have many, are you going to target the other guy's resources? No, that'd be insane to try to do that. And think of this disparity. So the poor man's strategy, even now, strategy exhaustion, you see Al-Qaeda pursuing it today, is to attack the other guy's will. In other words, make the cost in blood and treasure so high, go up so high, that finally political and popular will for the war erodes, and you just say, hey, you know, this isn't worth it, and the cost in blood and treasure, we quit. The only way the South's going to win the American Civil War is if the North quits. So the South has to make the cost in blood and treasure go up enough so that the political will erode, and they quit. So bottom line is, when you think about this, the Confederates, Robert E. Lee, will be targeting the same thing as Al-Qaeda is trying to target today. One very good example of a successful strategy of exhaustion would be the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese obviously didn't have anywhere near the resources of the United States, but because they targeted the will side of that equation, they still prevailed. So think about that. Now, these guys are very sophisticated. Robert E. Lee understands all of this. In his language of his time, he refers to Northern will as Northern war weariness. Northern war weariness. As soon as we can increase Northern war weariness, we'll have a negotiated settlement, peace will be at hand. That's what they're trying to do. He writes Jefferson Davis. I can't tell you the amount of correspondence between Robert E. Lee and the Confederate president over this very issue about Northern war weariness. They understand what it's going to take here. Now, we love today to look back at the American Civil War, and because of this disparity of resources that I've already told you about, think that the end of the war was inevitable, that the North would win. Not so fast. Especially when you get the Gettysburg Campaign in 1863, will in the North is eroding, just like the Confederates are hoping for, because the cost of blood of this war is unprecedented. You can take any Civil War battle, major battle, you name it. You name the battle, Second Bull Run, Antietam, Gettysburg, Chancellorsville, you name the battle. That battle by itself, 1, 2, 3-day event, exceeds all the casualties the United States had in the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Mexican War combined. So the blood cost, the pay of this war is unprecedented. So will eroding in the North. Now, I'll tell you what my favorite story to pretty much illustrate this. The Democrat, remember Lincoln's a Republican. He's got to run for re-election in 1864. The Democratic platform is already beginning to coalesce in the beginning of 1863. The platform is this: the war is a mistake. Should have a negotiated, immediate cessation of hostilities and a negotiated settlement. If you're Abraham Lincoln and the Democrats defeat him in 1864, the South goes a long way to achieving their policy objective of some sort of independence with a negotiated settlement. The last thing Lincoln could have is the Democrats defeat him in 1864. Now, the radical Democrats, the radical peace Democrats, are known as Copperheads. Copperheads. That was supposed to be a derisive term, meaning snakes in our midst. But guess what? They actually liked the term and would wear a copper penny to show everybody in public that they were a Copperhead in good standing. The leader, one of the leaders of the Copperhead movement, was a congressman from Ohio named Clement Vallandigham. Remember, the Battle of Gettysburg will be 1, 2, 3 July 1863. In January of 1863, Clement Vallandigham gets up on the House floor in Washington and makes a very famous speech. And he's speaking right to Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln administration. And he says this, here's his message: money you have spent without limit. This war is costing $1 million a day in Lincoln's dollars. Okay? Money you have spent without limit. Blood you have poured out like water. Defeat, debt, taxation, sepulchers. These will be the only trophies of this war. Throw King Lincoln off his throne. And guess what happens? He gets a standing ovation from the Democratic side of the aisle, and Abraham Lincoln, way too many Republicans on the Republican side of the aisle go, man, that was a good speech, wasn't it? Okay, really unnerves Lincoln. So how's this solved? Clement Vallandigham, he is lame duck congressman from Ohio, goes on a speaking tour in the Midwest. Same message. Well, members of the Lincoln administration have Congressman Clement Vallandigham from Ohio arrested. Can you imagine if President Obama today had like Eric Cantor from Virginia arrested for something he's saying? But now, Lincoln is a very shrewd politician, shrewd PR man too. He realizes that this might not pass the smell test, okay? So the way he solves this problem is they take Clement Vallandigham to the front lines near Murfreesboro, Tennessee, under a flag of truce and hand a United States congressman over to the Confederates, okay? Clement Vallandigham will make his way around to Canada. Term of office will expire, and he'll run for governor of Ohio in 1864. He'll be defeated for some other issues we don't have time to talk with today. But my point of this story is will in the North is eroding. There's an opportunity for the Confederates and Lee to have strategic effect and win this war. Now, Lee, I told you the weak man strategy is a strategy of exhaustion, where you husband your resources. You make it go on long, defensive battles, make the war go on as long as possible until the other guy gets tired of the cost and blood and treasure quits. Lee does not think there's time enough to execute a true strategy of exhaustion. And it comes down to this. He thinks the North's resources are so great compared to the Confederacy that they will bring their resources to bear and win the war before the South's actually strategy of exhaustion would ever erode will enough to prevail. So he wants to speed up this process, speed it up. And the way he wants to do that is with an artificial stimulant, and that's his army. What he wants to do is this. His adversary in the Virginia theater is the Federal Army of the Potomac. He wants to, on the battlefield, utterly destroy, through annihilation, the Federal Army of the Potomac. I mean, kill it, make it go away. Now, he understands the North has the resources to raise another army. That's not what the point is here. He wants to destroy the army as a psychological blow that'll be the straw that breaks the camel's back on Northern will, and their morale collapses, and then they just say, we just lost our most politically significant army. It's not worth it. Let the South go. Let's have a negotiated settlement. So Lee is trying to speed this process. To understand Robert E. Lee's behavior on any battlefield of the Civil War, you only need to know two things. He's there to destroy the Army of the Potomac. Utterly destroy it. And two, the clock's ticking. Every day of the war that goes on, the Federals get stronger, Confederacy gets weaker, and that goes for his army too. So this is the other kind of corollary that's very important to get inside Lee's head. Every battle he fights, even if it's a great victory, does nothing for Robert E. Lee at the strategic level if he does not destroy the Army of the Potomac and make it go away so he can influence Northern will. So even a great battlefield victory does nothing for Robert E. Lee, in his mind, except spend resources he cannot afford. I'll give you two quick examples of this that really illustrate it the best. After the great Confederate victory at Fredericksburg in December '62, way lopsided Confederate victory, Lee writes his wife, I'm much depressed. Much depressed. This is one of Lee's greatest victories. I'm much depressed. The battle really accomplished nothing. Why? Federal Army was not destroyed. Probably my favorite example is Chancellorsville, Lee's greatest victory. Lee's greatest victory. When General Pender comes up to tell Lee at the end of the battle at Chancellorsville that the Federal Army has slipped across the Rappahannock-Rapidan River line to safety, Lee explodes in rage. Now, Robert E. Lee could be ill-tempered, but Robert E. Lee rarely lost his temper. And when General Pender comes up and says, well, General, yeah, they slipped across the river, Lee goes, red-faced, well, I'll probably have it now, but he goes, and sorry, sir, you're going to be you're General Pender right now, okay? Hey, no, these people continue to slip away because my officers will not follow my instructions. Go after them, damage them all you can, go, 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 go. Nobody was more surprised than General Pender. Nobody's seen Lee like this. He's like becoming unglued. Why is Lee so upset? This is his greatest victory of the Civil War. Here's why. He lost 35% of his regimental commanders, 33% of his brigade commanders, and Stonewall Jackson shot by his own soldiers, his most trusted corps commander. And in Robert E. Lee's mind, all that was spent for what? Absolutely nothing, because the Federal Army slipped away and it could not be destroyed, only to have strategic effect. You got to understand that about Lee. So that's what he's doing. Time's not on his side. Now let me flip slides and show you what he wants to do in this Gettysburg campaign. Okay. Now, here's how Lee plans to win the war. Coming off, actually, you can see Washington, D.C. right here on the map. Obviously, you guys know that about 100 miles south of that's Richmond, Virginia, and in between's Fredericksburg, right? And that's where the armies are coming off Lee's victory at Chancellorsville, about 50 miles south of Washington on the Rappahannock-Rapidan line down here. His plan is this. With his army, he's going to move out into the Shenandoah Valley. You can pretty much see Winchester, Virginia right here, that modern Interstate 81 goes through. He's going to go up the Shenandoah Valley, which up here, as you all know, becomes the Cumberland Valley. And guess where he's heading? He's coming right for Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Capital of Pennsylvania, Andrew Curtin, very powerful northern governor. And also, you can see some railroads, B&O and other railroads up here. Some major Union railroads go through Harrisburg. Lee doesn't care anything about any of that, other than this. Harrisburg is bait, because he figures if he comes up here with his army sitting on Harrisburg, they're going to be screaming to Lincoln in Washington, D.C., hey, you got to go do something about Robert E. Lee up here and all of that, right? They're going to be just screaming at Lincoln. He figures there'll be political pressure on first General Hooker, and then he's going to turn it over to Meade, but there's going to be pressure on the Union Army of the Potomac to come after him. Here's what Lee expects to happen. They'll do forced marches up here to come after him, get all strung out here in the vicinity between really York and pretty much Carlisle in this area right here. And then Lee would have his army turn on them concentrated, and as the Union Army comes up in piecemeal, pounce on them and destroy them in parts, piecemeal. Remember, the Union Army is larger than Lee's army. That's his plan. Then he would utterly destroy the Army of the Potomac in the north. Think of how that's going to look in the press, foreign newspapers, possible British, French recognition. And then that will be the blow that collapsed Northern will, and you get a negotiated settlement, you win the war. Lee is on this campaign to win the war, not a battle. Not a battle. Winning like another battle doesn't do anything for Lee. He's here to destroy the army and win the war. So that's the plan. Now, on the 3rd of June, he's going to pull out of here or move up. He's got General Ewell's corps in the lead. At Winchester right here, he'll capture 4,000 Union soldiers and 23 pieces of artillery. They will then cross the Potomac River on the 15th, head north here. And Lee's other two corps under A.P. Hill and Longstreet will cross the river on the 25th, begin crossing, head north here. Now, big day, the 28th of June. You can see Lee's army is all spread out. But remember, what was his plan? His plan was to actually be concentrated up here and catch these guys spread out as they arrive. So on the 28th of June, you can see Lee's army is all spread out up here. You got Early over in Wrightsville, or one, by the way, I love to tell this story. The good citizens of Pennsylvania and Wrightsville, there's a bridge right here. They did not, the Columbia Bridge, and they did not want the Confederates to have a bridge to get across the Susquehanna. So the people of Wrightsville, being patriots, caught the bridge on fire. Unfortunately, by mistake, they also caught their town on fire. Okay? So when Gordon's Confederates arrived actually here at the river, they put the town out. So to the citizens of Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, the Confederates were never all that bad. Okay? Now, what's going to happen is Robert E. Lee with General Longstreet as First Corps commander in Chambersburg right here, when a spy named Harrison comes into the camp on the 28th that was hired by General Longstreet as First Corps commander with some alarming news. The news is that the Federals are across the Potomac River. Lee thought they were still south of the Potomac River and much closer to him than expected. And Lee didn't want to believe the spy. He didn't trust spies. And General Longstreet says to him, hey, General Lee, we can't afford not to believe him, because if he's right, they'll catch us spread out in piecemeal and may destroy our army instead of us poised to destroy their army. And Robert E. Lee said, you're right, General Longstreet. And on the 28th, the next day, orders go out Lee will order first a concentration, get all the army back together again at Chambersburg, and then he will amend that to Gettysburg or Cashtown as circumstances dictate. So the only reason Lee's army's heading eventually to Gettysburg is to concentrate it all, because he can't be spread out. You may have heard they were going there for shoes. That's a myth of Gettysburg. Lee is now caught with his pants down, has to get his army concentrated before his own army might be destroyed. Okay, that's all he's worried about. Now, why is Lee blind? Why is he up here with no situational awareness? In the 19th century, what's the eyes and ears of a Civil War army? Cavalry. And this is Lee's cavalry commander, James Ewell Brown Stuart, JEB Stuart. You may have heard of him. Now, when this thing gets underway, I told you Lee's army moved on the 3rd of June, starts moving. If you were paying attention, taking some notes, you would have noted a date, the 25th of June, when Lee's actually following corps are crossing the Potomac River. On that date, the 25th of June, JEB Stuart's going to get permission to ride around the Union Army and meet Lee in Maryland or Pennsylvania up here. Now, if you're Robert E. Lee and James Longstreet, hey, is that a good idea? First of all, has JEB Stuart ever done that before? The answer is yes, twice before. He did it in June and October of 1862, and when he got back, I mean, when you do that, you come back with great intelligence. What's the size of the federal force? What roads are they on? Where's their logistics train? All kinds of great information you bring back when you do that. Now, the 2 times JEB Stuart did it before, anybody tell me how long he was gone away from the army? 3 and 4 days respectively. 3 and 4 days respectively before he showed back up again. Here's a key point. The other 2 times JEB rode around the Union Army, it was stationary. Now it's moving north, just like Lee anticipated with forced marches and all that. So JEB Stuart will get behind the Union Army that's now moving. Now normally, the rate of advance, how fast forces move, of cavalry is usually much faster than foot soldiers walking along, right? So why JEB Stuart's going to get slowed down? Over here, he's going to capture 125 wagons and 600 mules of goodies. The Confederates are always in need of supplies. So JEB Stuart's actually going to attach 125 wagons and 600 mules to his cavalry column. So the rate of advance is slowed to a wagon train. So now they're moving north here. And what's going to happen is JEB's going to move north through Westminster. Then he's going to keep moving north here. He's going to go through Hanover to York and eventually head this way towards Carlisle where we are. And here's what happens. He's going to be gone by the time he finally gets back to Lee, engaged at Gettysburg. It will be 8 days. He'll be gone like over a week. Remember before? 3 or 4 days. What's going to happen when JEB Stuart gets up here, he keeps getting word, hey, the Confederates are in York, or they're here. So he's following all the reports he's getting that are always time late before so he's going to come to Carlisle because Confederates were here in Carlisle looking for Ewell's forces that you can see on this map. That's why JEB's going to be coming this way. Now, Lee will approve this ride around the Union Army. Lee approved it. But his assumption was, based on experience, we're all captured by our experiences. Lee's assumption is, hey, this has worked out well for me in the past, and JEB's only gone 3 or 4 days. So Lee's expecting that's what's going to happen here. So Lee will become more and more concerned as JEB doesn't return, and that will be why Robert E. Lee will be caught with his pants down up here with the Federal Army much closer and have to order emergency concentration at Gettysburg. Now, should Lee have been blind? Should Lee have been caught with his pants down? The answer to that question, now we get into the personalities, the answer is no. JEB Stuart on this ride takes like 5,300 troopers with him, 3 brigades. Civil War, his brigades, that is a unit whose size for JEB Stuart, he takes 3 brigades with him, 1,200, 1,700, and 1,800 strong, to give you an idea of the numbers involved. JEB Stuart takes 3 brigades with him on this ride. Anybody in the audience want to tell me how many brigades of cavalry JEB Stuart commands? I know you guys know the answer. 7. 7 brigades of cavalry. That means there's 4 extra brigades of cavalry. So what's Lee doing with those? How come Lee's blind if JEB only has 3 of them on this ride? Well, this is a great story. I promise me you're going to like this. All right. There are 4 brigades of cavalry left over. 2 of them are regular brigades of cavalry, normal. They're normally part of the Army. 2 of the other brigades actually were attached to the Army just for the Gettysburg campaign, and they're composed of irregular soldiers. They're not normally with the Army. They're not actually been very experienced. Lee has a bias here. That's going to be very crucial to this. The irregular soldiers, Robert E. Lee thinks are ill-trained, ill-disciplined, and totally unreliable. Lee is not comfortable using these irregular soldiers. He will not make good use of them. Now, I'm going to make you, I've just anointed all of you. You're now JEB Stuart. You're the Confederate cavalry commander. Let me ask you a question. In your cavalry brigade assignments, Lee doesn't like irregular soldiers. You got 2 irregular brigades and 2 regular brigades. Which ones are you going to give to Robert E. Lee for the campaign? The regular brigades. It seems pretty obvious, right? The regular brigades. Robert E. Lee would actually have those regular brigades, be using them, wouldn't be caught with his pants down. Guess which ones JEB Stuart gives to Robert E. Lee? The irregular soldiers that he will not use. They're commanded by Jenkins and another commander actually named Emmenden. The 2 regular brigades are commanded by Beverly Robertson and another officer named Grumble Jones. These are the 2 names I want you to remember. The 2 regular brigades. So what does JEB Stuart do with those? The ones Robert E. Lee would be comfortable using? He leaves them, they're right here on the map. He leaves them down here in the Shenandoah Valley guarding the line of supply back to the Virginia. Now you ask yourself, that sounds like a great mission for those irregular soldiers that don't have a lot of combat experience, right? To guard the line of supply back to Virginia? You would think. So the obvious choice here is you leave the irregular brigades down here in Virginia and up here you'll see there's Jenkins, and here's Emmenden, the 2 cavalry brigades Lee doesn't use. So you start asking yourself, peeling this onion back, why would this be the case? Well, here's the reason. It's not a good one, but you'll find it interesting. JEB Stuart and Beverly Robertson were both engaged to marry Flora Cook, okay? Right here at Carlisle, Flora Cook was engaged to Beverly Robertson, of course, before the Civil War when her father was a cavalry school commander here, and the engagement later became broken off. Then Jeb meets her and marries Flora Cook. It's a testosterone issue. These guys never get along. They hate one another, okay, over this. Interpersonal relationships matter. The second guy, Grumble Jones, he and JEB Stuart detest one another, just absolutely hate one another. JEB Stuart actually tried to block his promotion to 1-star general in Brigade Cavalry Command. JEB Stuart tried to block it. Robert E. Lee actually overrode him and said, no, he's qualified, and actually made the appointment. Much to the chagrin of JEB Stuart. He was not a happy camper. Now, at the beginning of the Gettysburg campaign, there'll be a pass and review ceremony with Robert E. Lee as the guest of honor on the 8th of June. In that ceremony, Grumble Jones will go out of his way to embarrass JEB Stuart in front of the boss. And here's what he does. He will be passing and reviewing with this cavalry brigade last. So when it gets started, he goes, "At ease, everybody off their horse, just lay down on the ground until it's time to go." Now let me paint a mental picture for you that might not have any military experience of what this would look like. I want you to picture a marching band performing at halftime of a football game. And they're in the middle of their routine when the trumpet players, just because they're not playing right now, just lay down on the football field. Kind of ruins the pageantry and spectacle of it all, okay? Robert E. Lee will actually turn to JEB Stuart with this very quizzical look like, what's going on out there? JEB Stuart will be incensed. He will have staff officers racing over there to get Grumble Jones' guys back on their horses. And, of course, all the while, Grumble Jones is over there going, got that son of a... Okay. But that's what he did. He sticks a stick right in JEB Stuart's eye right in front of the boss. So now here's what's happening. These guys are going on the campaign to win the Civil War. And JEB Stuart in his brigade assignments decides, guess what, Beverly Robertson and Grumble Jones, I'm leaving you down in Virginia so you won't be there to get any of the glory when we win the great battle and win the Civil War. Now let me ask you a question. What would have been better for Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia on the campaign to win the war? obviously for Grumble Jones and Beverly Robertson to be with Lee. He would use them. Okay? This is we do a lot of actually outreach engagements and all and bridge these battles to leadership principles. We do both for the students and actually some Fortune 500 CEOs and other people that come here for some wonderful engagement programs that we have here. And this is a point we make with those guys, the Fortune 500 guys and senior Army leaders. Says, people, it's human nature. People will put interpersonal frictions, tensions, rivalries ahead of what's best for the organization. I don't care if you work for IBM, the United States Army, or the Confederate Army, people will do that. 9 times out of 10, they will put their own personal disputes ahead of what's best for the organization. It's something as a senior leader you always must be on guard to watch out for. What we tell these guys is 2 levels below you, I call it knowing who's who in the zoo. 2 levels below you, you need to know you don't have to know everybody's reading their email and stuff, but you got to know the basics of who gets along with who, what are the interactions between your subordinates, because this stuff will come back to bite you in the butt. It bites Lee in a big way in the Gettysburg campaign and one of the major reasons of the failure of this campaign. Robert E. Lee was clueless to this stuff. He didn't understand any of this, and all it takes is one question from Robert E. Lee that Jeb Stuart won't be able to answer. Well, General Stuart, why are you leaving the irregular brigades with me? That Jeb Stuart would not have there's no good answer for that question. He's certainly not going to tell him the truth of what he's really doing here. Okay? Now, that pretty much, we were following all that, Lee's order, emergency concentration, Jeb Stuart. Now we fast forward, to the 1st of July. Jeb Stuart still looking for the Army. So the last report he got was Confederates in Carlisle. He's over in York. He will come through Dillsburg, heading towards Carlisle, and ride right up into Carlisle about 6 o'clock in the afternoon on the 1st of July, looking for Confederates. And he's going to run instead into Baldy Smith and some Pennsylvania militia at Carlisle. Totally unexpected. And then this is where the story now passed to the esteemed Dr. Summers. So thank you very much.